right, and welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I am Johnny Craddock,
And I'm Darren Lundberg.
and today's episode is going to be A Time to Kill, a Joel Schumacher film from 1996, starring Matthew McConaughey, Samuel Jackson, Sandra Bullock, Oliver Platt, Chris Cooper's in there somewhere,
Kevin
Donald
Feige.
Sutherland, Kiefer Sutherland. It's an all-star cast. And Darren, just real quick, I want to tell you, I picked this movie. And I haven't seen it probably in like 30 years because
Really?
I don't think I watched it from start to finish since we first saw it in the theater together. And I want to say
Wow.
this because I would catch bits and pieces of it here and there, but never from start to finish. And I would put it in sometimes to watch it and
Uh-huh.
then fall asleep. So I would never get all the way through it. So
Age
yeah,
does
so
that.
this is the first time in like 30 years that I've watched it from beginning to
Wow.
end. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
That's
this should be
amazing.
a fun conversation.
Yeah. And it is 30 years. Like as recording it is like 2026. So this
Yep.
movie turns 30 years old.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's crazy. All right.
yeah, this is a new year for us. We're starting in 1996, and we usually like to kind of go over some box office numbers of what was popular at the time, what the
Yeah.
top 10, box office movies were. So you have that in front of you, don't you?
I sure do. Like what we usually do, I'll just read the top 10 like worldwide. I like doing this because it gives us an idea of where we were at the time, right? And it's fun to look back and go, wow, that was a lot of movies that we saw in theaters because this was the time we were seeing everything.
Yep.
96, I believe, was really when we were hitting it hard. Okay, so the top 10, number one, no surprises, Independence Day. Thing was a juggernaut. So that made $817 million
Okay.
worldwide. Twister was number two with 499 million. Mission Impossible, holy crap! Like this last year, we ended the Mission Impossible series. 96 started the Mission Impossible series. That was 457 million. Number four was The Rock with 336 million. Number five, wow, Hunchback of Notre Dame. You've heard
Hmm.
me get angry about that one on this podcast before. That's 325 million. And then rounding out the top 10 is Ransom, 101 Dalmatians. I'm guessing that's the Glenn Close remake. The Nutty Professor, Jerry Maguire, and Space Jam. So that's
Okay.
the top 10. The Time to Kill is all the way down at number 18. I think it made 152 million. So still
So it made the
respectable.
top 20 at least.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a crowd pleaser for sure. But yeah, again, a nice little kind of pop. Like you remember seeing most of those? I don't
Yeah.
think I've seen Space Jam all the way through. I know I've seen bits and pieces of it. So basically everything else I know that I've seen, but that's crazy that we
Yeah.
saw all those in theaters. 96 was also the year of the independent film, right? That was the like Jerry Maguire, remember, was the one blockbuster because English Patient is on here. I think Shine is on here somewhere. So that was the
Okay.
big independent year at the Oscars. So in
Okay.
97 anyway. But
Yeah, well, Darren, like I mentioned, you and I saw this together,
we did.
and I forgot which theater it was at, but I remember just loving it and just like being totally enraptured by what we were seeing and what we
Yeah.
saw.
We all
And
did.
after it was all, yeah, after it was over, we went to Dairy Queen. Is that where we
Probably.
went? Like, got like a blizzard or something, and
Yeah.
just like we couldn't stop talking about how good it was and what we loved about it, and just the experience we had had. And having been 30 years before I actually watched it from start to finish again, I thought my opinion would change quite a bit. And
Uh-huh.
I'm surprised, you're probably gonna be surprised to hear me say that it hasn't.
Oh,
Like
really?
I still think this is probably one of Joel Schumacher's best films. Like I
Okay.
just, even though there are problems, which we'll talk about, but this movie, like, it just engages me. And I just get like, the story, like, gets me excited. I like just the characters. I love all the acting is really good. And we'll talk about
Yes.
that too.
Yes, it
But I
is.
just really like a lot of what I'm seeing. And it didn't disappoint again. And I watched it with my older son, and he really enjoyed it, but it was also kind of fun to, to watch him experience for the first time.
Right.
Um, but yeah, this is a good movie. I mean, I really don't have much negative things to say about it, but I know you have some. Like I say, we'll talk about those things.
Right.
But yeah. What do you remember about our experience when we first saw? What do you remember that we did or what happened there?
I remember again, John Grisham, huge in the 90s. And so Schumacher had already done The Client. They already made The Firm. Pelican Brief also came out the same year as The Firm. So John Grisham was pretty big, and adaptations were pretty big. So I remember sitting and watching the movie, and just again, it's very involving. Number one, I think it's the sweatiest movie ever made.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Vaseline budget for this, because everybody is just slathered in Vaseline, especially Ashley Judd. I think that's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
her
She
shoulders.
shines and
I know,
sparkles.
her shoulders are always like revealed, and so yeah, she's just gonna have a ton of Vaseline on
But
her.
you know what that does is it makes me feel like I'm sweating and
Yeah,
hot and sticky with them. And I thought
yeah,
that was, I really like that because I feel like I'm in Mississippi, in the
right.
South, in the heat. And it's like, you just feel it. And I
You
love
do.
that.
Well, Joe Schumacher is probably one of our least subtle filmmakers. So it's the wetness of the movie is maybe a little over I think even John Grisham was like, Schumacher knows that we have air conditioning in Mississippi, right? Like it's not just all sweltering. But yeah, you do right. You are right. It does add to that the claustrophobia of it. I just remember being in awe of the acting, because we knew who Sam Jackson was. We knew who Sandra Bullock was, because of, Speed was
Speed.
huge, 94.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction was huge for Sam Jackson, and so we knew
Right.
who they were. And then McConaughey, I don't think anybody really knew who he was. This was his star-making performance, and he's really great. Like this, the way he delivers, he's very charismatic. He's always been very charismatic, and he's always very fun, easy to watch, and he's got good line delivery, and he really gives the speeches really well. And he's charming. He's got the southern drawl. Women go crazy for him. What But McConaughey, I think he kind of coasted on that personality for the longest time, until maybe the mid 2000s. So after this movie, I was really bugged by him, because he was just the same in everything. But he's really, I think he's gotten his acting chops, and so now he's a serious actor, and so I appreciate that about him. But yeah, that's the thing I remember, is all the acting. And M. Emmett Walsh is in there, Kurtwood Smith is in there, like Kiefer Sutherland shows, Donald Sutherland. You got all these people. They're like, holy crap! Like every Chris Cooper. Like I love seeing Chris Cooper in here. Brenda
Yeah.
Fricker.
Yeah.
It's great, because you watch it from that. Oh, all these that guys. It's so great that you've got this movie just peppered with such a great cast. And I remember that was the feeling of watching the movie anyway.
Yeah. What I remember is seeing the trailer for this movie and all the other movies we were watching. And so you would watch this trailer and you see, Sam Jackson's famous line where he's like, yeah, they deserve to die and I hope they burn in hell. That whole thing. We
Yeah.
would see that over and over again at every film we'd go to. And so, like, it got me excited to see this movie. So when it finally came out, it was like, oh, we're finally going to see that movie we've been seeing the trailer for years now, it seemed
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But anyway, so what did you order at Dairy Queen?
Probably, I think the only thing I liked at Dairy Queen was they had a cherry shake, and
Okay.
I can
I'm
taste it. I can
I'm pretty
taste
sure
it
I got
now.
the Blizzard, like the Reese's Pieces Blizzard, I'm sure.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, you talked about Matthew McConaughey, this being his
Yeah.
star vehicle. One little snippet that I know about is that Kevin Costner was set to play Brigance, and he wanted to direct it and be totally in control of it, and so
Very Kevin Costner.
he got thrown out, and we're glad that he did because he was probably too old,
Yeah.
and plus I'm not a big fan of Kevin Costner,
Yeah.
so
He already played a Southern lawyer in JFK and did a great job. So
yeah.
why does he need to do this again? So yeah.
Yeah, but it does. I see why it appealed to him though. It's kind of like this is a Kevin Costner type,
Yeah.
script. I would, so I can see why he liked it. But like I say, I'm glad it's not him. I'm glad
Right.
it was McConaughey because
He would have made it a star vehicle, like an all about him. It wouldn't have been as much of an ensemble. Like if Costner was in it, I don't know if they would have kept the same cast, you know what I mean? Because it's not aged appropriate. Maybe they'd have to cast older actors. Morgan Freeman maybe as Carl Lee or whatever, but he would have pushed everybody else in the background. It would not have been an
yeah,
ensemble. And so that's what I'm grateful for.
yeah, I agree. Well, so John Grisham, you're a big John Grisham fan, right? You read a lot of
No,
his
I'm not.
novels.
Well, it's funny because we covered The Rainmaker with Brian Scuttle, right? And so I don't want to repeat a lot of stuff in there, but I do want to talk about how I don't think Grisham is he gets you involved, and he's a great like summer read, kind of like light frothy kind of stuff. But he always bugged me because at the end of The Firm, the characters get themselves in this pickle, and it's so hard to get out of. And you read a book, and you're like, how are they going to get out of this? Right? That's the satisfying thing, right? And then they just run
Run away.
away.
Yeah,
Same thing. The Darby character, right? Darby Lynn Shaw, like she's involved, and it's so heavy, and everything's. How is she going to get out of this? And she runs away. The client, like they both the kid and his family, they get in deep, and the Susan Sarandon, they have all this stuff, and how are they going to get out of this? And they run away. Like I didn't understand. Like why am I reading these 400-page books just to have the characters kind of give up? and it's just not satisfying. I know that they can capture the bad guys or whatever, but they're still running away because they're involved in the mob, right? So that always bugged me. And A Time to Kill, I think I hadn't read that one until after we watched the movie. I know this is famously his first book. He was very personal to him. I think he in 84, which is supposedly when the movie takes place or the book takes place, he witnessed a case of these two girls that were raped and beaten and almost murdered. But it was reversed. The girls were white and their attacker was black. But he wrote a book. It took him 3 years to write this book from the perspective of what if the father went after the assailants, right? And so it took him 3 years to write the book from that point of view. And then he sold the rights for $6 million, all that stuff. I thought it was interesting because since it's his first book and it was so personal to him, he got casting approval, full casting approval. And so Joel Schumacher, other than Kevin Costner, I think they went to Woody Harrelson to play Jake Brigance. But
Okay.
Grisham had gotten involved in 94. Oliver Stone made Natural Born Killers from a Quentin Tarantino script. And Grisham had a family friend who was operating a mill or the manager of a mill or something like that. And one day these two kids, this I'm just going to pull up the case here. These two kids pulled up to this old mill and were asking him questions. It was a guy named Bill Savage in Hernando, Mississippi. And so these two kids, they murdered the guy. They murdered Savage and they went on a killing spree. And this is a family friend of Grisham's who knew him very well. And so these two kids, when they were captured, they said that they were inspired by watching Natural Born Killers. And so that started this whole thing with John Grisham. He tried to sue, or somebody else was trying to sue the company because of the wrongful death, and Grisham was backing it. And he and Oliver Stone got in this huge feud about responsibility for filmmaking. And I know we talked about that during Fight Club, right? Where Fight Club incited all these copycat kind of crimes. And Fincher's like, look, it's out of my hands. I gave the movie to the world, and it's everybody else that decides. But also Fincher was like, if you do like this movie though, I think you're crazy. Like you're something wrong with you for liking this because it's not a positive. It's not something
Oh,
you're
something's wrong with me.
yeah. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So it's the same thing with Natural Born Killers. It's like, yeah, Grisham thought that Oliver Stone was glorifying the violence. And I guess you could see it from that point. But Natural Born Killers has always been, to me, a movie that's like, look how culture is celebrating these killers and they're turning murder into like glorification and it's all about excitement and stuff. I don't buy Natural Born Killers as a positive. It's everything about it is gross. And if you watch the movie thinking, "Oh, this is going to make I'm going to be happy to go out and shoot people," like you're not getting the message of the movie, right?
Right.
But John Grisham again was arguing that the movie glorified it. And I think the case it went to the Supreme Court or something like that, but it was thrown out because it's like the filmmakers are not responsible for what they make. It's people that watch the movie and decide what they're going to do. And
Right.
then that's where the guilty party is. And so when Schumacher decided he wanted to hire Harrelson, Grisham was like, absolutely not. I do not want anything associated with Natural Born Killers
Okay.
to be involved in my movie because I think when he wrote the book, Grisham based Brigance on himself. So he's like, there's no way I'm having this guy. I don't think he bore any ill will towards Harrelson. It was just he didn't want to have anything Natural Born Killers to do with his book, something that sounded
Okay. I
personal
see
to
that.
him. So yeah, again, it's all this. Anyway, so the long story short is I didn't read the book until after. And as I was reading the book, I got halfway through and it's really good. Again, it involves you and all that stuff. It's pretty similar to the movie, how it plays out. But then somebody told me they knew that I was reading the book and I can't remember who it was, but they're like, you know that it's not Jake that gives the big speech at the end, right? And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, it's somebody out of the blue that gives that exact same speech about imagine like the girl being punished and raped and tossed off a bridge and all this stuff. And now imagine she's white. It's not Brigance that gives that speech. And I'm like, are you kidding? So I where I skipped to the end, and sure enough, it's a random jury member that gives the speech that gets Carl Lee exonerated or
Mm.
acquitted of the murder. Jake Brigance he's in a corner. He doesn't know how he's going to win. And all of a sudden they dismiss the case. And so he's like,
Mm.
what happened? And he goes and talks to the jury member and jury member says, yeah, I did this. I said this speech and it got him out. And I'm like, why am I reading a 400-page book for someone else to come in and solve the problem? What
Yeah.
kind of writing is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who writes like this? This is terrible. This man sucks. And so I haven't read a John Grisham book since then. I'd read The
Okay.
Firm, I'd read The Pelican Brief, I'd read The Client, but I did not finish A Time to Kill. And I barely have time to watch movies that I want to watch. Why do I want to sit down and read a 400-page book just to have somebody come in besides the protagonist and solve the problem? How frustrating is that?
Yeah. I
So the
debated
way
whether
that
or
they
not I should read the book, and I was like,
no
nah,
no
Darren's not going to read it, so I'm not going to
no
read it.
so the way that they changed the movie, again, it's very we'll talk about how that wouldn't fly like at all in a real case, but how the movie ends with Jake giving that speech to appeal to everybody's moral conscience, right? It works as a movie, but yeah, as a book, I don't know. I don't know if John Grisham has improved since then. I know that since then there's been two sequel novels. I think it was Sycamore Row and A Time for Mercy that had Jake Brigance in it, and then The Last Juror and The Summons has Lucian, and it has Harry Rex. So
Okay.
the Donald Sutherland and Oliver Platt characters show
Hmm.
up in those books. So I know it's like a anthology stuff like that, whatever. And so anyway, I don't know if John Grisham's improved since then, but I have not bothered to read a book of his since then because I don't have the time.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the other writer, the screenwriter,
Okay.
Akiva Goldsman.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on him, real quick?
I think he's a very basic screenwriter. I know he won the screenplay for A Beautiful Mind, and I am not a fan of that movie. I think it's a very basic movie, basically shot, well acted. Again, I think Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly do a really good job. I just don't buy the whole. I think that the schizophrenia as making it exciting and action packed. I think that's really offensive to people that actually suffer from schizophrenia, and so it doesn't work for me. And it's the twist where Nance, I can't remember the name of the main guy. Anyway, it turns out that he's imagining the Ed Harris character and the little girl character. It turns out, oh, they're not really there. And again, Akiva Goldsman's always been so proud of how he tricks so many people. And it's like, dude, I've seen The Sixth Sense. Like, you're just copying that. There's nothing spectacular about what you're doing. And then you have the whole thing with Batman Forever. You have Batman and Robin. I just Lost in Space. He wrote the year after this, which is just a terrible screenplay. And I know they basically hired him because it's Akiva Goldsman, writer of Batman and Robin, that kind of thing. But it's interesting too. Did you notice the movie is interesting because the way that it's structured, it starts off very quiet, and the Elliot Goldenthal music is kind of insinuating something. It's
Hmm.
it's ominous, and then you have the Billy Ray and what's the other character's name? Pete, right? They have their pickup truck, the yellow pickup truck, driving. It's really loud, and it keeps cutting back to Tanya shopping very quiet, and then it'll cut back to them loud in the truck, and it has that whole thing where anyway, the scene, I don't know if it's tasteful the way that they shot it, but the way that they cut it so you get an idea of what's happening to Tanya, and it's still really shocking. I was watching it today, physically shaking. I
Mm.
think I've seen this movie maybe twice since we saw it in theaters, just so I can. Was it really that good? That kind of thing. And I think the older I get, the more angry I get at that
Mm.
scene. It just makes me so angry. But the way that it cuts and shows it, and then it cuts and shows Jake leaving home and Harry picks him up, and then it cuts back to what's happening with Carly and the family, and then it cuts back to Jake like he shows up at his office, stuff like that. I watching it today, the structure is weird. I think it would have been more impactful, and I don't know what you think of this if they kept with the Carl Lee Haley stuff, that whole tragic thing. You get the whole story, how he comes home and she's like, I'm sorry, I dropped the groceries, which is just so heartbreaking. He takes him
Yeah.
outside. The whole neighborhood is seeing, you get a glimpse of her face finally. And then he gets in the car, brings her to the hospital. I thought it would have been more effective if then you cut and show Jake's home life and everything's normal. And then they do their stuff. He shows up at the office or whatever. And then he goes to lunch with Harry. And then that's when the Chris Cooper character comes up and says the little girl, 10 years old, like all that stuff. I thought that would have been more impactful. But the way that it's edited in the movie, it keeps intercutting that, which
Yeah.
is weird because I used to be a huge Batman Forever nerd. Like I knew everything about that movie, and the Lee and Janet Scott Bachelor script was a much better kind of emotional script that gave the characters a lot more room to play. But the Bachelors were TV writers. They're only known for writing the Equalizer series. And so they had to bring in Akiva Goldsman to punch up the script. And he did a lot of weird stuff. Like he made a lot of it really silly. And he's the one that in his revised scripts, he originally in the movie it was you see Two-Face, you get the whole thing, and then Two-Face escapes and all that, and then it cuts to Bruce Wayne showing up at Wayne Tech, and he's introduced to Edward Nygma and stuff like that. Then he sees the bat signal, then he goes out, and then that's when you get the scene where he goes and meets Two-Face and Chase Meridian. And so the screenplay, the Bachelor screenplay, was very it had a nice kind of structure to it. Akiva Goldsman came in and it mixes all that up. So now it shows Batman first thing getting dressed, shows up at the thing, interview, like gets involved in Two-Face, and then it does the thing where it shows up, he meets everyone. So the movie is structured in a way to be very punchy, and it's not about structure. It's more about spectacle. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just about getting to the point as fast as you can, showing all these things so that, oh, we don't want to build the Batman showing up. Let's show Batman at the very beginning. And so, again, I don't know if Goldsman is 100% responsible for that, but seeing the revised screenplay with his name on it, I just thought that, oh, he's taking a lot of the meaning and a lot of the point and the again the structure out of the original screenplay that I liked. And so I just that's what I mean by him being very basic. The Time to Kill plays the same way, where instead of building to introducing the Jake Brigance and everything, you're juxtaposing. So it just feels weird
Yeah.
if they'd structured it in a way where then, after all the horrible stuff, then you back off, you show Brigance, and it would have more of a, you know what I
Impact.
mean, an
Yeah.
impact, right? And so I don't know. That's what bugs me about Akiva Goldsman is it just seems like he's like, oh, let's get to the point instead of being a very nuanced writer.
Yeah, I see what you're saying with the whole intercut and everything. And I didn't really mind it when we first saw it, and I noticed it this time. I did notice that it was doing that.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It would be more impactful if it did stick with Brigance during his part and with Carly Haley during his scenes. Um, but yeah, I see what you're saying about it being kind of jarring. Kind of like takes you out of what you just saw and then goes back to where you were. And so yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
But can we for sure blame it on Akiva?
I
We
don't know.
don't know.
It's just his name is on the thing, and so that's
All right.
basically what I mean. It could do with editing. There's a part later. I think Brigance goes to see Noose, and Noose is like, "I'm not going to change the venue." And then I can't remember what the structure of it, but then the next time we see Brigance, or no, it cuts to what's the Brenda Fricker Ethel, right? It shows her
Yeah,
and Bob, and like
the
they get
secretary. Yeah.
attacked. And so the logical thing to do would be as soon as they're attacked, they go to the hospital. It would be show Jake showing up at the hospital. But instead, that's put later. So it just feels weird the way that he goes and he meets with after the thing with Ethel and Bob. It cuts to him with Roark, right? And how they meet at the diner or whatever. And then it cuts to, oh, Brigance shows up at the hospital. So that was another thing that was weird. I was like, that's wouldn't it have made more sense to move that scene
Yeah.
like right after he talks to the judge, and so that's why he goes and he drinks and he gets hung over. I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
It's just very. I'm not sure what to blame the editing or the writing, but some of the, like I said, some of the juxtaposing between scenes just felt really jarring. Like again, when we watched this movie in '96, I don't think we were quite aware of structure and stuff. Like we just want good and so the movie's good because it makes you feel that
Yeah.
and you feel the impact of it. But when you watch it as you're older, you're like, something's not right here. Like your
Yeah. Something feels
sensibilities
off.
change.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that. Um, but yeah, I mean, he did adapt it from the novel, so it's kind of hard to tell who wrote what, especially when it comes to the dialogue, because I mean, I think there is some good dialogue in here. I think
Yeah.
the lines are well written, and there's some good comic relief with Oliver Platt and everything. And
Yeah. Oh,
I
great.
think, yeah, I think a lot of it's really well written. So, I mean, it's good overall, but yeah, there are some definite issues with it.
Yeah.
Um, Real quickly, I want to say this. I I don't really follow Joel Schumacher per se. I mean, I like Flatliners and I liked, back when we saw Batman Forever, we liked it.
Yeah.
But this one I think is probably one of his best movies. Didn't we see 12 at Sundance together?
We
Like,
did.
yeah. And I think
That's a
I
good
liked
movie.
that movie.
Mhm.
And we got to see Joel Schumacher take some questions and answers. And he talked about how he worked a lot with Kiefer Sutherland and everything and how,
Yeah.
anyway, it's kind of fun to know that he's in this movie, another Joel Schumacher movie. But I think it's probably one of his best movies. What do you think?
So the thing with Joel Schumacher is that I don't know why this is, Kathleen Kennedy just stepped down as head of Lucasfilm, I think today. And so, somebody else took over. And Kathleen Kennedy is a very hard, like famous, hardworking producer who's produced all of Steven Spielberg's movies, who produced The Sixth Sense, right? She's a very, very good producer. She knows what she's doing. But all anybody is doing right now is they're just concentrating on her time with Star Wars since 2012 and how much she screwed up. Anyway, that's a whole story with Star Wars. I don't agree. I think the whole idea of Disney Star Wars is basically screwy, and Kathleen Kennedy tried to make the best out of a situation. You're not going to know what to do in that, or how people are going to react to that kind of thing. But the way she stepped down now, all anybody can focus on is how much she screwed Star Wars. And I'm like, she had a career before Star Wars, guys. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? She did a lot more stuff that you're not paying attention to. And it's the same thing with Joel Schumacher. All anybody concentrates on when they talk about Joel Schumacher is how he put nipples on the bat suit, right? They talk about how bad Batman and Robin is, which again, you're talking watching movies when you're older. I think Batman and Robin is still not a good movie, but it's not as bad as some of the cynical, embarrassed comic book movies that have come out since then. It's not nearly as bad. It's bad, but not that bad. And he did something different with Batman. He did what was necessary for Warner Brothers to make it more financially like successful, right? And he
Yeah.
did his job. And that's all anybody concentrates on. He did Flatliners, which we talked about, right? He did Falling Down. I think Falling Down is maybe his best.
I
That's my
I love
favorite.
falling down. Yeah.
Love it. It gets you so angry and so excited at how excited and so angry. No, it gets you angry at how excited it makes you because it makes you side with this guy who's racist, because you're feeling all these things that you feel in real life, right? And so
Yeah.
it makes it's conflicting, and I love that it does that. It's so good at doing that. He did Tigerland is great, like you're talking about. 12
Tigerland.
is great. um the Client and A Time to Kill. We talk about John Grisham movies being, and again, I don't know if we talked about this during The Rainmaker, but when you do a John Grisham adaptation, do it like The Firm did it. Do it like A Time to Kill or The Client or The Rainmaker. Treat it like pulp. It's not serious. This is not gospel. It's not Shakespeare. It's a summer beach read movie.
Yeah.
Treat it like that. You stack your cast with all these stars. You make it so fun to watch. It's nonsense. But you're having these actors sell all that. You don't do it like the Pelican Brief, where you're treating it like it's the most serious thing on the planet. And it's so unintentionally funny when you're watching because you're like, this is about a girl like running like in disguise, running away from hitman. It's not that serious. And so I think The Client, we know that we talked in The Rainmaker how The Firm is our favorite John Grisham adaptation. I love how it changes the ending so that Mitch McDeere doesn't run away; he solves the problem. But I think as far as cast go and atmosphere goes, The Client and A Time to Kill are probably number two or interchangeables, number two or number three as far. No, no, I think The Rainmaker is my second. So like number three or four as far as John Grisham
Okay.
adaptations go. Great, and I think the way that the movie is shot, it looks very similar to The Client. It looks very sweaty.
It does.
You know what I mean? It looks very. It's Peter Menzies Jr. doing the cinematography. I don't know if he did the cinematography for The Client. I could probably look that up, but I think that these two movies could exist in the same world, which they probably do, right? According to the Grisham novels, you could look over and see Susan Sarandon like practicing her final statement, like in down the hallway a little bit. I think the movies look very similar. That they, how we watch sequels to movies and we're like, I want a different feeling from a sequel. I want to
Yeah.
have a voice. I like the idea of The Client and A Time to Kill looking like they're in the same universe. These characters can, it's very pulpy that way. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like I said, I think Falling Down is my favorite a Joel Schumacher movie, but let's calm down, guys. Let's not make him the villain here just because he did a couple of not great Batman movies. There's so
Yeah.
much else that he's done, and he's so much more talented than what was. I think we talked about that during Flatliners. He's got a
We
very
did. Yeah.
music video aesthetic, but it works. It looks when you watch Flatliners, you're like, yeah, give this guy Batman. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
could do a
Yeah.
good job. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's not my favorite Joel Schumacher movie, but I think he knows how to play an audience like a piano. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Yeah.
that's why it works.
Yeah. I agree with that. Well, let's talk about the acting because that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We briefly talked about McConaughey already, how this was his, star vehicle, how it made him who he is. We didn't know who he was back then, so we were like, "Who is that guy? He's pretty good."
Yeah.
Um, but so I like him. I think he's very believable. I think he's definitely got the charisma for this character and for what you need in the starring role. And I think it's a little bit like he's mugging it a little bit, like especially at the end in that last speech where he's trying to get that tear to fall. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think it does. Eventually he does eventually start crying, and it looks real, like he's really crying, but he tries to get there. You know what I mean? He's really
Yeah.
working hard to get there. But I still believe it. I still like him, and I think he does a great job. I like Matthew McConaughey. I think he's
Yeah.
great in this.
I'm surprised he didn't. Maybe this is like a star turn. Like a lot of star vehicles don't get Oscar nominations. I'm surprised that he didn't because it's a very, like you said, like we didn't know who he was. And then when you watch him in this, you're like, who is this guy? Like he's great. And like I said, I think he kind of coasted off that for the longest, maybe too long a time after this. But as far as making an impression, like, yeah, I like, again, I like when you're watching him give that final summation, and it cuts away a couple times to Spacey and to Samuel L. Jackson and the family and stuff, and Oliver Platt stuff, and the judge. But it does that very sporadically. I think it mostly stays on his face. So you're right, he does try to get there, but I like that the camera is on his face for so long that it feels natural.
Hmm.
When it gets to the part where he's like, imagine that little girl, and he just starts breaking down, I'm like, yeah, I buy that. It took him a bit to get to it, but I buy that moment because he's think you know what I mean when you watch an actor, some actors like you can just tell them, okay, my next line is, and then my next line is, but instead right here I think you can feel that he's thinking about his daughter, he's thinking about Carl Lee's family, what that means. And so when he breaks down, I buy it, I totally buy it. And again, he's got such great chemistry with Sandra Bullock. It's so, I think it's unfair that their chemistry is so good because you side with him to kind of cheat on his wife. There's a party that's like, yeah, Sandra Bullock, like go for it. You know what I mean? And so it's a little bit awkward that way. But he's got great chemistry with everybody. He plays with Oliver Platt really good. Like he plays with
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey. It's funny how I think I suppressed that Kevin Spacey was in this because as soon as the movie started and I saw his name, I'm like, oh, that's right. Kevin Spacey's in the anyway, but I think it's not just acting and being able to deliver monologues. I think it's being able to bounce off other actors. And yeah, McConaughey and Bullock had such good chemistry that they dated for a little bit, and they're good friends to this day. But I think that's a big part of it. Like he really plays with everybody and has a good relationship with everybody.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely have chemistry, but I am glad they did not, have the affair. I'm
Yeah,
glad that
it
he
comes
was strong.
close.
And yeah,
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 there's part where they go to eat the crawfish or whatever, and then they almost and you're like, no, no.
yeah,
And then later after the guard has been shot, and she's like, do you want me to stay? And he's like, yeah, I think I want you to stay. So that's why I think you should go.
yeah.
Like
Every
I
time
like
they
that.
did that, my son's like, "Don't do it, don't do it."
Yeah,
So
that was great. The other thing that's really interesting too, and we'll get to Jackson and Bullock, is he gets third billing in this.
I know I saw that.
And that reminds me of Christopher Reeve getting third billing for Superman. Nobody knew who Christopher Reeve was, but they knew who Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman were. So
Yeah,
that's how you're going to market the movie. I think it's a brilliant way to market the movie to have Bullock be number one, Jackson be number two, McConaughey number, because you're going to the movie to see Sam Jackson and Sandra Bullock, but then you see McConaughey, you're like, who is this guy? Like,
right, right.
it would have been worse if they tried to market it towards McConaughey. I think again, I'm getting all these weird tangents, but the Sabrina remake that came out in '95 with Greg Kinnear, Harrison Ford,
Harrison
Julie
Ford. Yeah.
Ormond, they marketed that on Julie Ormond, which no shade to Julie Ormond. I think she's lovely in that movie. She's lovely in everything, but nobody knew who she was. Why
Hmm.
wouldn't you market the movie on Harrison Ford as the
I know,
latest
right?
Harrison Ford movie? And Sabrina did not make as much money as it should have because of that. I think the marketing for Time to Kill is very smart because it gets you in the door for Bullock and Jackson, but you stay for McConaughey. And I think that's McConaughey anchors this movie. I cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, I think he's great in Interstellar. I think he's great in Dallas Buyers Club. Um, but I think this is the movie again that anchored him, that made him a star. And you watch it, you're like, yeah, I absolutely see why this rocketed him to
Yep,
stardom.
for sure. Well, Samuel L. Jackson, fresh off of Pulp Fiction and all that stuff, I think he brings his A game. He does what he does best, and
Absolutely.
yeah, like I say, I went to this movie waiting for that moment where he gets to yell on the stand that, yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell. That's all I was waiting for. And
Right.
so it was very satisfying when I finally saw that moment. But yeah, I mean, Samuel Jackson's great. He's pretty good at everything he does. I can't
Right.
really. Maybe he sneaks on a plane.
He's got Samuel Jackson is one of those guys where he can be in a bad movie, but you'll still watch him because I think I don't know if you and I did we go see Dreamcatcher together?
Yeah,
And Morgan Freeman is such a good actor that he can sell anything, but he's so bad. He's awful in Dreamcatcher, and you watch him and you're like, oh no, like if Morgan Freeman can't sell this, we're in trouble. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
Jackson is one of the he when you hear that Samuel L. Jackson has been cast in this part and seeing him act his ass off, basically, he's got the gravitas. He sells this the accent. What as Jeff Foxworthy famously says that if you hear somebody talk in a southern accent, you automatically deduct some IQ points, right? Carl Lee is very smart. I forgot the whole thing with the NAACP,
yeah. I love
how
that
how
scene.
how the Reverend Street comes in. I forgot all about that. I'm like, oh, I didn't know where it was going to go. I completely forgot. It's been that long since I watched it, and I love how Carl Lee. You think he's like, he says axe him, that one
Yeah,
part.
yeah. Accent.
So they treat him like he's a Southern idiot basically who acted on impulse, but he's really smart. He can see this happen. He's loyal to Jake. How he turns that and says, well, if you're going to pay this money, like he looks at his own pastor and is like, how come you didn't offer to share this money with my wife and my family? They need food, right?
Yeah,
And so how come you did? And so they basically paid him in the corner. So these guys have no choice but to pay the $7,000 to this. That scene is so fun, and it's
it's
such
so
a crowd
satisfying
pleaser.
too. Yeah, I love it.
Jackson plays the way that they play Carl Lee, how he's very instinctual, and how he says, well, he's talking to his wife, and I love the scene where he's like, I'm thinking of those two boys as I shot them and they went down like flailing on each other, nowhere to go. And that's the only thing that gives me comfort. And I'm like, that might be the most relatable thing in the whole movie, right? Because I know
Mm.
if something happened to our kids, we would have that rage, right?
Yeah, but I still think it's incumbent upon us not to take the law into our
Exactly.
own hands.
Exactly. Right. But that's the thing. It's like, what would you do? Would you take
Yeah,
it to
you would
that?
want to
Yeah.
take that action. Yeah,
And so when he says that, it's like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, right? But I like how he said, "What did the pastor say exactly?"
yeah,
And so you think he's the Southern good old boy kind of guy, right? But then how he turns the tables on that team, you're like, oh, this guy's really smart. And then when they go back to the jail cell, and Jake's like, "We make a pretty great team," and Carly's like, "We're not a team. You're out there, and I'm in here," right?
yeah,
Great stuff. I don't want to trivialize Jackson's performance. He does everything that Sam Jackson is meant to do in a movie like this. You know what I
yep.
mean? But
He
it's
makes the
not.
eyes all big and everything.
Yes, it's not the revelation that McConaughey is because we didn't know what McConaughey who he was, what he was capable of. But Samuel Jackson gives a very solid Sam Jackson performance in here.
Yeah, and then of course Sandra Bullock. I think she adds a lot. She has the I mean, she has the chemistry like we talked about with McConaughey. She has the look. She looks great on film,
Yep.
and everyone loved her from Speed. So she was like, you know, of course we're gonna love her in this too.
Right. Well, the note that I had is like, man, 90s Sandra Bullock was the sexiest Sandra Bullock. I think it's her confidence as Roark, the way that she wears the suit and the skirts and the high heels. It's like, yikes! Like she has the confidence and she's very outspoken. Sandra Bullock's always been very easy on the eyes, but I think it's the confidence, especially because you watch her in Speed as Annie and she's cute, like she's adorable, like she's got that adorable energy, but she doesn't have the confidence that she has here,
Yeah,
right? And so, but again, I think she was paid what $6 million, maybe 6 weeks of work, so she wasn't really there. It's interesting how it takes an hour and 15 minutes before she's actually on the case with them and taking part in the court case, right? But I think she's like Jackson. Like she gives a very solid performance. I like when she goes to the doctor, the psychiatrist's office, right? And she plays up her kind of she acts dumb to turn up her sexuality so that guy
oh
she kind
yeah,
of dupes him
yeah,
into telling you where the guy's office is, that kind of stuff. And she makes a great foil from Connie. I love the scene where they're finally sitting down together and they talk about the death penalty, which everybody has opinions on the death penalty. She's very against it. I don't know if Brigance is for it as much as he's just trying to needle her into seeing where she goes because he's amused by her when she gets upset and pays and like you're a jerk or whatever, you're a fool, and she gets up and he's amused by her and
yeah,
he thinks for it and then he goes after her or whatever. And I love the idea. The whole point of that scene is that we can have different ideals and different politics, but we can still work together if we're going towards a common goal, right? And so that's where he refocuses, goes, I need this, I need that, I need this. Can you do this? Yep, we're good. Okay, let's do this, right? I
yep,
love that scene. And the chemistry, like I said, the writing, how it makes Carla she's always basically putting Brigance in his place. She's always putting her husband in his place, which is the wife's responsibility, right? But the way that she does that, and I think her argument when like after you can tell that Jake is enjoying the spotlight, and when they set the cross on fire on their front lawn, and she gets mad at him for, why should I be upset that you weren't here when her house is almost burned down, that you weren't here for dinner? That I think she's very justified in being angry with him, because you look at Jake, and again, Jake didn't go to Sheriff Walls and tell him what was going on. He says that he tells her that he did, but he didn't do it. And
Yeah,
yeah, if you'd said something, and I think that's illegal. Like if you know your client's going to do and you didn't say anything or whatever, then that's, you should have stopped him, right? And so
right.
he's rightfully put in his place. But the wife, I don't want to say nagging, but that's how it comes off. You end up siding with the Bullock character because she's the one that's always, making sure that Jake is on his 2 feet, and she's flirting with him, and she's making him feel important. You get why he's going to want to cheat with her. You know what I mean? That's where they're aiming it toward. I just think the writing is maybe kind of sort of unfair to Carla in a way, because you're making it seem like just because she's putting him in his place and telling him what he's doing wrong, that makes her less attractive to him, and that makes the relationship less something that he'd want to pursue. Like, go with this other girl that has more of your interest at heart. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's in there because they want the sexual tension and they want the
Attention.
love triangle, and I think it works. I think you do successfully get that sexual tension.
You mean there's not enough sexual tension from all the Vaseline that's on Ashley Judd?
That's just a spray bottle. It's just water.
Sure, sure, whatever.
No, I don't know. I think it works overall, and like I say, I'm really happy that the affair doesn't happen. That
Mm,
I was always happy that didn't go there because whenever movies go there, so I was like, now we gotta deal with this other subplot of like cheating on somebody, and now they're gonna have a big fight and they're gonna have a big scene, and it's just I just don't want to deal with that. I don't have time to like think about that part of it. I'm still focused on the case and what they're working on. So I was really happy that it never goes to the whole
right.
three-way
And
love
it
affair
does it in a
thing.
way where Jake is on, like I said, you get that's why it's happening, but the fact that he keeps making sure that there's a, when she's in the
In the
hospital
hospital bed,
bed and
yeah.
she's like, you want to kiss me, don't you? He's like, yeah. And he in my notes, I didn't put Jake and Ellen. I put the way that McConaughey kind of hovers over her lips for a quick second before moving to her head. That's cruel, man. Like, anyway,
Yeah. Well, is there anyone else that we should talk about, or is that the main three?
Oliver Platt, I think.
Yes.
It's funny because what were the notes I had? It's funny watching this because Oliver Platt had already starred with Kiefer Sutherland in Flatliners. He'd already starred with Kiefer Sutherland in The Three Musketeers. So
Oh
it's funny
yeah.
seeing them. It's funny seeing Bullock and Beth Grant together after they were in Speed together. Like Helen gets pulled under the bus. That's Beth Grant. I like how Kiefer Sutherland and Bullock were in the remake of The Vanishing 3 years before. They played a couple. I like that you see Spacey and Jackson together, and then they were in The Negotiator.
Oh yeah.
I want to come back to briefly to talk about Kevin Spacey, but Oliver Platt, you basically could have written him out of the movie. He didn't need to be there, right? It wouldn't have
Yeah.
affected anything.
He's only comic relief, but he does a
He's
really good
good.
job in the comic relief.
And he has my favorite line. Like I said, Joel Schumacher is maybe one of the least subtle filmmakers. Nothing is subtle in this movie except one line where Jake's house has been burned down. And then Harry comes to see him and he's talking to him and he's like, look, this is what's happening. This is going to happen. You're on the verge of having an affair. And I'm like, oh, like I like that bit of subtlety in there, how he recognizes it, right?
Hmm.
And so I love that. I love Oliver Platt has really good chemistry with Sandra Bullock too. I like when they're sitting at the table and she gets mad and she throws the lava because I didn't like that
Yeah.
one. Like
I
you
quote
shouldn't,
that line all the time, by the way.
yeah.
Whenever someone
Or
drops something, didn't like that one.
sure, yeah. Or that's a great line. Or when he's like, okay, so you don't you shouldn't do what Jake does. You shouldn't do what a Buckley or whatever the Spacey character. What you're ignoring is what would I do? So I really like that stuff. Or when it's what Spacey's walking through or whatever, and is like, how why don't you come work for us or whatever? And Roark goes, how's the impotency thing working out for you, Rufus? And then when they walk off, Oliver Platt or Carrie is like, impotence? He's like, yep, girls talk. I thought
Yeah.
their chemistry was just really fun. But
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey, I was going to, since I mentioned that it's fun seeing Sam Jackson and Spacey in this movie together. And then for them to star in The Negotiator. I don't know what you think about The Negotiator, which I think was 98 or 2000, maybe. But I just thought that it was an acting powerhouse. It was fun watching Kevin Spacey and Sam Jackson in this movie. No matter what else was happening in the movie, they were so good. And I miss, because of what Spacey turned out to be, it's another one of those things where I miss seeing an actor show up and thinking this guy was a powerhouse, right? Whenever he showed up, he was going to give a great performance. And now when you see some of these guys, you're like, I don't want to watch this guy. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to give him a compliment, even though again he plays a great foil in this. I
Yeah,
don't.
but
What do you
he's
think?
well, he has been good at playing, creeps and slime balls, and maybe because he is one in real life.
Yeah, yeah,
So it just comes natural to him.
right.
But yeah, I remember liking The Negotiator when I saw it.
Yeah, very very solid genre movie. Donald Sutherland's great. Obviously, Kiefer Sutherland plays a really real bastard. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
And he's good at that too. Hope he's not hope he's not one
yeah,
in real life.
yeah, he plays it really well. And I think somebody came up to him after and was like, "Yeah, you played that really well." And he's
Wait,
like, "You don't
didn't
do this
he get
acting, right?"
arrested? He got arrested recently.
For an Uber thing. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
So,
don't. It sounds like the Uber guy wasn't letting him out, and so he tried to assault him or something like that.
oh,
Anyway,
okay.
which I would do too if somebody wouldn't let me out of a car. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Anyway, but everybody in this, Charles S. Dutton is great. We need him. I loved him in the '90s. So, and Emmett Walsh when he shows up, everybody is so great. And I think that's. I have my problems with the writing. I have my problems with some of the law stuff, which we'll talk about. But I think the acting, it always, whenever I'm like, what? I don't buy that. The acting always sells it. And I think that's a major draw for a movie, don't you think? If an
Hmm.
actor can pull off stuff and make it work, then yeah, like that's what movies are all about. It's about giving the material that you have some extra oomph because you're so good and you're so committed to the part.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So what's the law stuff you want to talk about?
Well, what I noticed this time, and I think again when we watched it in '96, we're so caught up in how it has you in its grip, right? The problem with legal thrillers is I don't buy them moment to moment. Like, especially if you look at a judge character, right? The judge is basically there to say sustained or overruled, but it's always for the point of the plot. It's always because, oh, the defense that we're on their side, they need to be stymied at one point, or they need to have a real good rah-rah moment at one point. And so the
Yeah,
judge, I don't know, that's not how it plays out in a real life court case. Like a judge is always going to say overruled or sustained
sustained.
based on
Yeah.
the evidence, right? And it happens here and a couple times because it seems like Noose is antagonistic. Again, Patrick McGowan, very good. It seems like he's very antagonistic, but when he brings Brigance over and says, I can't change the venue, like that's logically what and he tries to get him to argue a plea deal, right? It's logical that he would do that. He's not a villain. Like I think that's just what he's doing. But the part where they bring up the Chris Cooper character, what is his name?
Looney.
He's Looney, right? And
Yeah.
he's lost a leg because the bullets bounced up or whatever. Great scene when he's on the stand and he says something where I think the Spacey character where Buckley says, "Did you recognize the shooter?" And Looney says, "No, I didn't." Like Carl Lee came to me later and said, but I love how Carl Lee clocks it. He's like, "Wait, he just gave me an in." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you have the whole scene where he's getting Looney to, and finally Jake gets up and because Carly says axe him like if he thinks I should be arrested or whatever. I like how again I like how Jackson plays that up. But when Jake goes to ask him like, "Do you think he should be punished for these crimes?" and Looney says, "No, you release him." Before he says that, you can tell Buckley's up on his feet. He's like, we can't allow this witness to do this." And Judge Noose says, "No, I'll allow this." And as soon as Looney says, "You let him go," then Noose is like, "Oh, you've got to shut up now." It's like, "Oh, that was really quick. Like, why
Yeah.
did you allow this and then not allow it?" So
Yeah.
that's another thing where it's like, oh, they're only going to say those two words depending on where the plot needs to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, and I don't think we realize that when we're watching a courtroom because we're expecting those things to happen. But in real life, that wouldn't happen. What do you think?
Right. I agree with that. Like you mentioned the whole change of venue thing, that I think a change of venue would happen in this case because you can't get a fair trial with,
Yeah,
an all white jury. You just can't. You can't.
right,
It wouldn't be fair. And he's like, that's a jury of my peers. You know what I
right.
mean? So it's like, I agree with you. They are there just to like, move the plot forward and like say what they gotta say to just to kind of like help
Yeah.
or like I say stymie the characters. But yeah, I agree with that.
You have the scene where it's the Mickey Mouse character. I have all these notes. I'm like, oh, they introduced this, they introduced. I think the Mickey Mouse thing might be a little too much. Like, there's too much going on. It seems like. And so you introduce that, and he basically calls and says, "There's going to be something bad that happens tonight." And then it shows the clan member come up and like try to put the bomb underneath Brigante's house. And then it has the Walls character. I don't, I, I don't know if I buy that. How they're in cahoots and how Walls allows how Jake to jump out of his house, come and punch the guy and knee him in the face a few times. I'm like, is that like I
Yeah.
for the movie it works, but would that be allowed? You know what I mean?
No, I
It's
wouldn't. No, I wouldn't think so. No. But and that moment is kind of like almost too much for me when he grabs the bomb and it clicks and he chucks it and it's like, come on,
right, right,
And then of course his house burns down, man.
yeah,
So I don't know. A lot of stuff that happens is almost too much.
right.
You want your characters to go through a lot, but sometimes movies just take it too far.
Yeah. And so the main thing again, it's a courtroom drama. I think the point, Johnny, when you watch movies, you have to take a lot of these movies with a grain of salt, right? The problem with a lot of people that watch movies today is they won't accept what a movie actually is. They're in denial, like a comic book movie, they're in denial that these super serious comic book characters that are killing each other, it's based on a comic book written for children about characters running around in colored leotards. It's inherently silly. I don't know. People today, they'll watch that and go, I can't admit that something's silly. It's got to have gravitas and be serious and violent. And that's why I like it, right? No, it's based on a comic book. Like, I think you have to admit to yourself that that's what you're watching. And then you can enjoy it on a level that you're enjoying it on. Like, for a courtroom, you're going to accept things that are happening because I think Ebert's review is like, I am very aware that conventional stuff is happening. You've seen this stuff happen in countless movies, but because of the acting and the commitment and the sincerity of everything, it works, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a grain of salt movie. You just have to go with it. But the part that I had a real problem with this time, and you have there's scenes that go a little too far, where they attack Roark. I think that's way too manipulative is the word I would
Yeah.
choose, right? It has the scene where Freddy like is a sniper for all of a sudden just for one scene, and he shoots at McCants, right? And that comes out of nowhere. And the clan members coming up, and it treats it like it's entertaining, and it's more disturbing, and I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in here that's like, hold on, like that's a little bit too much. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I can see that.
The scene that I hate is when Brigance is in a corner and then Carla comes back and she talks about how I forgive you because I realized when I was on vacation at my mom's house that you wanted to you did this because of your daughter. Like, you had this conversation already. You know what it's just to make you feel better. But that whole scene, I'm like, what is this? Like, get this out of here. Like, it doesn't make
Yeah.
it makes I if you just showed Carla at the end showing up and they're at Carly's family's barbecue, I get that that's a conversation that they had.
Sure.
I don't need that weird soap opera-ish scene where it has them show up and all that.
I think
But
it's there because you want the closure on the whole love triangle thing. You want to know
you
that,
do.
yeah, I mean
I get it.
that's what the audience wants because they want to know
Yeah.
that he's been like denying Bullock the whole time, and then when his wife comes, they
Yeah.
embrace, and it's
It's
that's all it was. That's
yeah,
all it was there
it's
for.
just very obvious. Anyway, so you just have a lot of these things that I'm like, okay, it doesn't kill the movie for me, but we could have done without that. But the part that I really push back on, like we talked about, when Jake gives that final summation, it's all about I want you. And he does that thing where you have the Emmett Walsh character. It turns out that he was a convicted statutory rape. But then the question that I asked Elizabeth, I'm like, does that make it okay that even though he was 23 at the time and the girl was 17, does that make it okay that they ended up getting married and having kids? Does that make the statutory rape charge, like if that was our daughter that happened to, would we
First of
be
all,
okay with it?
why wasn't the fact that it was expunged brought up? If it's been
Yeah.
expunged, it's been expunged.
All
It
right.
shouldn't even be on the record anymore. It shouldn't even be anything. You can't, you know what I mean? If it's been
Yeah.
expunged, it's not even,
It's just brought up for the movie-ish quality of it to
yeah.
give them, oh, this thing that's happening is bad, right? It's very obvious what they're doing. So I don't know. I was like, does that make it okay, the statutory rape charge, how they kind of hand wave that away? But when Jake gives that whole speech about like imagine the girl and everything that's happened to her, they tie her to a tree, they try to hang her, it doesn't really work, and so they toss her over a bridge and all this stuff, and then I want you to close your eyes and imagine this stuff happening, and it shows all the bigoted jury members. Like, the jury member stuff was also very unnecessary. I didn't need to see them like vote anyway. So it shows the jury members reacting, and then Jake goes, "Now imagine she's white," which again, Great moment. I think when we saw it in the theater, we were like, "Ooh,
We we,
that
we
hit
gasped. We were
hard."
like,
Yeah, that did it. But the thing is, in real life, this statement would not be admissible in court
yeah,
because it's appealing to the emotions of a jury. It's not appealing to the facts of the case, which is what you need to do in your final
right,
summation. It's not about the legal evidence. It's encouraging the jurors to ignore the letter of the law and follow their hearts instead, right?
yeah.
And that would likely cause a judge to stand up and go, "Hold on, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. You can't do this."
Especially because they've been like leaving out all the rape stuff the entire time, and that's been inadmissible the whole time. So
Yeah.
now, also during his summation, he can talk about the rape for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, exactly. It would not fly in
No,
actual court, right? And so the whole time, this time I was watching going, this, I don't buy this. This would
yeah,
not happen, right?
but it is powerful and it
But
does
it is
work.
powerful, right? And this leads the other argument I have too is when it cuts to everybody waiting outside and it has the one kid that runs outside. And I wanted your opinion of this. I think it is absolutely categorically wrong for the kid to, for not just the kid, for the screenplay to say he's innocent.
Yeah,
He's not innocent.
it should have been not guilty,
it, or acquitted or something.
something like that. Yeah.
Innocent is telling you that he did not do this. That is categorically false. He
Yes.
did do it.
Yeah.
He runs back to his family. He's willingly accepting his fate that he's going to be arrested, right?
Yeah.
I get that it's a crowd pleasing moment, but the fact that the kid says that, you're like, wait a minute, innocent is not the right word. I would be I would be hold on, like I'd be in outside going, that's not right. You know what I mean? What did he actually say? Is that what you think too? Is that
Yeah.
that
I think we should blame Akiva Goldsman for that line. He probably wrote that one.
or and then it has the shot of Carl Lee grabbing Tanya and they're embracing and it circles around. You see the American flag in the background. It's like, oh, very obvious, right? It gets to that ending, and I get it. It's very manipulative. It's a movie. I just think it's when you look at Falling Down being so complicated in its feelings and it never pulls any punches, the fact that it's making you get excited for this character defense to get revenge on all these people, but he's getting revenge on innocent people for the most part. Like it's all part of society. The way that the movie is structured, it's fascinating. The way that it gets you involved in things that you should not
Yeah.
be involved in. And they had a chance to do it with this movie, but this movie it's geared towards being very entertaining, being a good crowd, which it is. But I just think that if they'd done the thing where they made it a complicated, the fact that the kid runs out and says innocent and they don't comment on it, it's like, I get what you're doing. You're not focusing on the complicated, what would make this a gray movie. You're making it a black and white movie. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's a good movie, but it's not a great movie.
Yeah.
But I still like it. Like
Yeah.
I still get entertained. I still love watching the acting, and I don't I don't know. I push back a little bit on the whole screenplay thing because I think a lot of it is really well written, and
Yeah.
there is
Well, a lot of it
great timing.
is.
There's great
Yeah.
deliveries. A lot of it's really well done.
Well, that's why the parts that I don't like, they stand out because so
Yeah.
much of it is good that when you get to a bad scene that doesn't work, you're like, this
Yeah.
doesn't match what I these other scenes. So that's all
Yeah, I
I'm
can see
saying.
that.
So it's just not a perfect screenplay. It's a very obvious screenplay, which is what Akiva Goldsman
Yeah.
does. So
All right. Well, is there anything else that we need to discuss, or what do you
I
think?
don't think so. I'm looking at my. That's what it comes down to. I have problems with it, but at the end of the day, it's a crowd pleaser and it does a good job of getting you
Yeah.
involved. I think we have a responsibility, Johnny, to realize that we're watching a movie. If it works, then it works. We have to be able to admit that. There are problems here. There are issues that I push back on. But as a piece of pop entertainment and a John Grisham beach read novel adaptation, I think it works. I don't have a problem with
Yeah. Well, what I've learned is I'm going to go watch Falling Down now because I haven't seen that for 30 years either.
Yeah. Yeah. Falling Down is it's a weird movie because you get a lot of people that are like, I don't know if they understand what they're watching.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of people today, like you watch the scene with them in the fast food restaurant, him getting a hamburger, and a lot of people don't realize why that's frustrating because I don't think they know the difference. You know what I mean? And so they're like, well, why is this funny? But people like us, where you look at the way a burger is presented on screen versus how you get it, like it's very different. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very fascinating movie to watch because of how it manipulates you and how you're feeling.
All right. So watch the movie. Don't read the book.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, don't do that. That's terrible.
But yeah, I mean, so that's the time to kill. And next time, what are we gonna do, Darren?
Okay, well, again, we're still in 1996. I've wanted to, it took us 100 episodes before we talked about Star Wars, right? It took us a number of episodes before we talked about Godzilla, which is huge for me. It took us, so I'm amazed that we haven't talked about a Star Trek movie yet. And
Okay.
so I've always wanted to talk about my favorite Star Trek movie came out in 1996. It's Star Trek First Contact. And so I want to talk about that. It's just, yeah, anyway, we'll get to it. But it's funny because I didn't know if I wanted to guess for this because I don't know who's a Trekkie out there. But I do have a friend, a fellow critic. Her name is Rachel Masters. We got in a conversation about Star Trek, and she started going off about how Star Trek means all these things to her. And I'm like, do you want to come on and talk about Star Trek First Contact with us? And she's like, absolutely. So we're going to have my friend Rachel Masters come on and talk about
Okay.
Star Trek First Contact, 1996, directed by Jonathan Frakes, with Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, James Cromwell, Alfred Woodard, a bunch of great people. I'm just excited to talk about Star Trek finally. It's something that means a lot to me, and it's, what is this, episode 130 something? We haven't done it yet, so it's about time.
About time we got to it. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, then for NostalgiaCast, I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lumberg.
And I do not like your politics, real art, but you do have passion. And that's what Carly Haley sorely needs right now. Well, maybe so do I.
Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.